All right. Well, I'm going to. I'm actually one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the announcement to make the URL clickable because I last night made a mistake and I put the URL in the announcement that I emailed around to everybody, but I didn't. It wasn't right. It wasn't a hyperlink. Okay. So. Okay. So this should be live. Well, it says it's live. Let me see if it's at the URL as specified. See if it actually, yeah, it seems happy. So I can see it. Are you guys, does anybody want to do me a favor and just, do you want to just go on to, just click the URL for the YouTube and see. It's on Blackboard, it's live now, and I just sent an email with the hot link live. As you can see it? Okay. So other students should be able to see it. All right. So we're going to start the class, even though nobody's online. I'm going to do it as if people are because that will, it will, you know, it's also going to record and I'll store it on the YouTube channel.
You're currently being watched. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Because it says to me that the only person who's on here is me. But maybe there's a lag or delay or something. Okay, well, good. Hi, Neha. I'm going to try and stay in the camera frame, which will make me a little less mobile than usual, and I'll also stream this onto the screen, which will be weird for those of you in the class, I guess. Well, it's my face because you'll get the view of me, you know, from the chins. I don't really feel we need to go over the news that much. We've already, you know, gone 10 minutes into class. But has anything come up that you've noticed in the last day or two? That,
last day?
I mean, that's all right. You don't have to go searching right now. I mean, we might as well just get right into it. But I have noticed that, like even today, I went to an event that Dong Chung was at for a little while, it's an event for a lot of people who are media creators and media academics and not like advertising industry people or whatever. And, you know, so they tend to be, I think, more on the creator side or the academic side, students. And the host of the event mentioned ad blockers. You know, there's been a lot about ad blockers. And there were a lot of hisses and boos from the audience about ad blockers, which, you know, I mean, I think as a media exec, like, yeah, I wish there weren't ad blockers. I also wish people couldn't copy and steal my stuff. I also wish people couldn't download my music for free. I also wish people couldn't, you know, copy my articles and put them up on other websites. I also wish, you know, people would always pay for whatever I want to be paid for. I also wish that, you know, people wouldn't steal my data. I also, you know, there's a lot of things that you wish, but I think I think part of what's happened is that the media industry and the advertising industry together have loaded up so much, loaded up the media with so much advertising technology and so much, you know, I'm going to mute the screen while I'm on it because it's just too weird for you guys. You know, I think it's too, you know, publishers have allowed it to get to the point. I mean, I think the way the technology, personally, my observation, I was talking to somebody today who you met, who's the chief scientist at, I'm friendly with her, and she's the chief scientist at Distillery, which is a data management platform and a display side platform, demand side platform, which are integral to the advertising architecture landscape, which we'll get into in the monetization part of the class. But anyway, Cloud is a really smart person. And I made the argument to her that what happened was that the technology was developed largely for desktop, and desktops have gotten much more powerful. You know, the browsers are relatively fast. The processors are relatively fast. They can handle relatively high bandwidth. And you know, publishers got used to lots of advertising. They used lots of ad networks, lots of ad exchanges, and weren't terribly careful about asking what else is going on in the background. What load is this putting on the page? What load is this putting on the processor? What load is this putting on the client? But now that a lot of people are on mobile with, as one of our classmates said, lower bandwidth and less powerful client side and, you know, less sort of all-powerful browsers, it can really mess up the experience quite a lot. So I think that people are, I mean, personally, I think that people are putting on ad blockers, not because they object to the idea of advertising in their media, but because it makes the experience so much easier. It speeds up your device, you know, 30%, 20%. It makes it, you know, you don't have to deal with jumpy nonsense on top of a page, and on a mobile screen that's even more offensive. And, you know, media is going to have to find a solution to that. Yeah.
I feel for the most part, people who use ad blockers, which is not the don't really object to banner ads or sidebar ads or anything like that. They object to the ones that specifically come in front of you that are intrusive to the user experience of reading the main site.
So I'm just going to repeat for the microphone. You said that people use ad blockers using them because they object to the ones that the ads that jump in front of you. But there are other forms of advertising, you know, like, but you know, this puts media owners in a quandary because, you know, it's hard to monetize media without advertising. If you can't use the existing advertising technology that's available for the open web, then you have to go through an app. If you go through an app, do you have to code the ad into the app, or which technology you're going to use? If you're going to use Apple News, as we talked about, or go through the Apple Store, you may have to use Apple technology to serve the ads, which means that it's either controlled by them or they take a cut, or both. And that may not work well with your existing ad server. So it can add money to your workflow because you have to traffic new ads, have new creative, have it coded in this different way, traffic it through Apple's system instead of through your own ad server that you're using for the web or whatever. And you might lose 30% revenue off the top. And you don't really have as much data or as much control. So because, you know, the people who consume you through, for example, through the Apple News app they've downloaded the Apple News app, and Apple has the data on that. You don't have the data on that, except for whatever little bit Apple chooses to share. And if you've done, you know, if you've created an app and Apple buys your media app, and you know, somebody buys your media app, they do it through the Apple Store, which means that Apple is handling the fulfillment, which again means Apple has the data. And we'll get into that later in this particular lesson, but or the distribution lesson if we get to it tonight or next time. But you know, the point is these are real quandaries the publishers are facing right now. So you know, to get around that, what do? Do you know, if you're a marketer, right? And I made this point on the LinkedIn file. If you're a marketer, do you care about supporting media? Do I have any particular need to give my money to the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN? Or no, if I'm a marketer selling detergent or shoes or tickets to baseball games or whatever, my job is to get my product in front of the right people. And if I can't do that through the New York Times or CNN or Washington Post because the ads are being blocked, then, but I can do it through Facebook or Apple, and maybe I'll just shift my ad dollars to Facebook or Apple. But that means if you're the New York Times, what are you going to do? Now you have this quandary of, all right, do I have to use Facebook Instant Articles and let Facebook share 70% of the revenue with me in the same calculation? The logon is through Facebook. The control is through Facebook. Facebook can change the terms. They can change it. So you know, it's one of these real sort of difficult issues. And you know, when Sasha, who's the publisher, CEO, and founder of Flavor Pill, I almost said Flavor Wire because one of their products is Flavor Wire, which is, I've seen huge traffic flow in from Flavor Wire, which is why I think of Flavor Wire first, and an indication to me of that they're an influential website. You know, we can ask Sasha that. You know, what do you guys, you know, what's your position on this? You know, Vox Media, Scott's here from Vox Media. Vox Media has decided we're not going to use other people's ad tech. Let me see. That's somebody texting me something about this. No. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a student saying. You know, Vox Media said we're just going to take native advertising. We're going to be an agency for our clients, and all the ads are going to be ones that we create, run in the stream, and we'll look at why native works in ways that sort of typical ads don't. Claudia works for a company that feeds the companies that serve these ads that are being blocked. She didn't really have a good answer. I'm sorry she's not going to be a guest this time, but you know, I want to ask her and her bosses. So let me call up the presentation for tonight. Sorry for those of you on the broadcast that we were a little late. Just I was having trouble with the technology.
The one thing that I found in the currently Netflix, the new Talking and Talk to listening together, they're using their own studio space, so they're pulling even further away from going through a third party film studio.
So Netflix is using their own. Okay. I also saw that Amazon had a significant slowdown for a while on their web services, and that actually affected Netflix, which we'll get into too as an issue. But that's part of that. That's part of that discussion we had about whether you want to do your own serving or do Amazon. You know, that's part of that control issue, right? Like if you're on Amazon Web Services, even, you know, your Netflix, Amazon Web, like I remember I said they promise you 99 point whatever % reliability, and they can promise all they want, but the fact is, if there's a glitch, there's a glitch, and what can you do about it? If it's your servers, at least you can do something about it other than call and say, please, 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 you know? So, you know, or you can decide how much redundancy you want, how much extra capacity, et cetera. So, you know, that was in the news in the last day or so, that Netflix was among the companies affected by Amazon's outage, slowdown, something happened with Amazon technology. All right, so I don't know, so I can't see who's online. Yeah.
I just saw Ralph's email. He says that he's watching from home.
All right, so I don't know why this doesn't. This says 4 viewers, 5 viewers. Okay, so.
Eugene and Nihan, they left comments on their YouTube.
They did? Okay. I'm not. See, this is Google's new interface, and I'm having trouble seeing anything. Let's see, comments. No, they're not on that. Let's see. They're in. Do you have it on a YouTube page right there, or? I'll take a look. Were the comments just like, "Hi, I'm viewing, Professor"?
Oh, there are actually 4 people. Kevin,
Yeah. Well, this says 5.
Nathan, oh, the 5th is Ross.
Let's see, I have 2 new messages. Yeah, well, this is 5. Okay, Ralph says he's there. All right. Let's see, 2 new messages. All right. This is 5. Sorry. Okay, you can turn off the audio on yours. I turned it off here. So, looking for comments. I'm in as well. Just in. Okay. So I see Ralph, Neha, Eugene, Kevin, and Nathan in. And what I'd like you guys to do is just to try to be part of this exercise. I've never done this way before, but let's see what happens. So take, I just said your names in order. Each one of you take one of these, exercises and think what your requirements for a content management system would be and a distribution mechanism for your media entity you will launch within 90 days. Consider your community, your content types, your social sharing, security, staffing, workflows, volume, etc. And so like I said, each of you one-on-one just consider an order. And then for the class, do you guys want to do it by yourselves or as a team? 5. So you could each do one. You want to just do one? One each? No, you want to talk? Okay. But I'd like you to consider it first so I can hear what you have to say. So, I'm sorry, Gregory, why don't you come over and talk with Miri, and then you 3 guys together, and then I want to hear. So, which one of these did Miri, to you, and Greg want? Why don't you do general interest, and you guys why don't you do health? Okay. All right. So I'll give you 5 or so minutes. Each one of you guys, in the hangout, do the same, and think of the things you would do. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they can see it. I'm sharing my screen.
All right, let's do overview. Check static graphic, personal health. If you want whatever content management.
So content management and distribution. What will you choose?
I don't know. So it's not really. It's not like it's new way of flow. It's like information elements of state or maybe about that are obviously within over community. It's basically we're aggregating. So we're not really giving personal information. That's what it's giving. Eat right.
Well, the only thing it says is personalized health portfolio stored.
Yeah, okay, all right, so that would be.
So if they have like a profile and say, but if you're entering into a website, it's kind of wide.
Well, sure, but I mean, I would cordon off that section of it. This personalized health portfolio should be its own security. Everything else we don't have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So we can.
I had a headache. What do I check?
Right. And
if someone posts,
So, yeah, but if you're dealing with like what's currently happening, if we get very areas of like that's the general out there.
But the distribution is maybe giving you all access to the content management system to be able to publish it on the website.
Yeah, I think that even if we're depending on how we're looking at it, it may not be as much of an because you would have that number you want to have that, but you also have the option for working with
So it should be able, to publish the different targets. So that it's the U.S. actually. Okay. rent stuff for.
Languages,
Or we just US space, so.
it's US based, which does make things easy. But I think we do definitely get away with English domination.
And it's Spanish, right?
Yeah. But as the USA develops, like developing the other languages.
I think if you look at, you want to, obviously want to provide. But we're not.
How would you want to do the person that is required that more personal statements from our end? How do you
But it's, the way I see it, it's something you want to put like their age, their gender, all that information in there, so it's on the profile, or they can, in some cases, like RedMD has two sides. They have the regular public side of the exam.
right? They're going to be one.
The doctors can actually go through and look at the person information, and doctors actually moderate this group, revenue-based people to actually provide, unofficial, close to your real doctor, but you can figure this, that kind of stuff, which is like, so it really depends on the person. Somebody might find it.
So,
Even right now,
People
that works. I can.
actually provide.
All right, we can get going. And Ralph, I was able to invite you. Anyone else who wants to be invited so we can see your face? Whoa, Ralph, that's kind of scary. There, let's see if that, okay. If anyone else, if you want to join in and have me invite you so that we can see your face and listen to you, please send your email address to my cell phone, which is on the syllabus. And the number is 646-258-7879. And since this is technically live to the world, everybody in the world now has my cell phone number. But 646-258-7879. Text me your email if you want to be invited so that we can see your face too and try to have you participate. Like I say, I really have not done it this way before. But in any case, let's talk about it. So Miri and Greg, you I don't know if I can lift up my computer to show you guys, but you know what, I'm not going to bother. But you had talked about you were going to do general interest news organizations. So let's see, what did you come up with? I'll write it on the board here. What are the, so there were they can't hear you, but I'll repeat it. So, and I'll write it on the board as well. I just want to make sure that it's visible. I unfortunately didn't set up a second screen. So, so you have a general interest news website. So what are the requirements that you?
You will have a web-based platform, but also
Web-based. So web-based. Why web-based?
It's
people get into work in the morning and just want to read the news. So
Well, this is more, you're choosing content management. Remember, you're choosing content management system, and you're choosing a content management system, so, and a distribution mechanism. So distribution, you're saying you're going to distribute on the web.
Yeah.
So there's CMS and there's distribution. So let's deal first with the content management system you think you might want. Why do you think, what do you think, what are the requirements that you would have for the CMS if you're a news organization? It's just, like thinking it through, like what's your staffing, what are your needs, what are the kinds of things you have to concern yourself with?
we were talking about having both your own people writing articles and having also freelance as well, because you have news from everywhere. You need to have media from like user generated or crowdsourced or like this trending.
So you have to have multi-level permissions. Is that what you're saying? Right?
Yeah.
Because you might give, right? You might give your freelance and staff and users different levels, right?
Yeah.
So different people have different access. Okay. What else?
So we'll have to have several sections because it's general interest.
What do you mean by sections?
So you're on the homepage and you would have
And-
sections like international news.
And so different sections for international,
Business,
sports, business, whatever.
yeah,
How does that affect your choice? How does that affect your choice of requirements for a content management system?
Knowing how many levels and how much, I don't know, say like, how to work into the website.
So you're gonna, well, I mean, you need a CMS that can handle. We looked at sort of the taxonomy, right? So you need to be able to handle multiple templates. I mean, pretty much, I can't think of a content management system today that can't handle multiple templates. But do you want special functionality, right? Like, do you need to have video? Is it going to be archived? Is it going to be live? Do you need to be able to share those stories on what platforms, right? Another thing is, how about the staffing issue for the CMS for a news organization? This can be really important.
We're trying to discuss that with you. So we don't
Yeah.
have,
So I mean, right? It's like number of people, right? Which is and then time zones, concurrent publishing schedule. So if you're a kind of news organization like a CNN that's or a Reuters or something like that that's international, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You want to be able to publish at any time of the day, night. You might have 20 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 people hitting the system at the same time. You're going to have to get a content management system that provides for that and can handle that. You can't have, that diagram of the system accessing the data. You need to have the capacity to be able to access the database and pull the templates multiple times, multiple ways, people publishing. So that's one of the core requirements you're going to ask for. And then, so you have to consider these kinds of things. And then if it's free of charge, that's another issue too. So you don't have to worry about, let me see if this whole black whiteboard is in view still. You don't have to worry about, payment fulfillment, right? But you do have to worry about, right, it's free of charge, so there's no subscription, but at least not for subscription. I mean, I don't know if you're going to sell e-commerce or something like that, in which case, if you do, you have to concern yourself with the plugins, right? Like how are we going to handle fulfillment if there is that? And then if there's advertising, can you handle the advertising system well? right? Like, what's your advertising system, and will your content management system work with that? You know, if you're, you know, these things all play into it. And when you're deciding on a content management system, you'll probably have the editorial team, the production team, the art team, the sales team, the marketing team, the technology team, all at the table, because sales is going to say, you know, you've got to use this sales system because, you know, this is the one that all of our clients want to use. And, you know, the marketing team is going to say, well, we have to be able to gather people's names and addresses and send email newsletters out to everybody. So you're going to have to handle email. And then the editorial team is going to say, well, we've got 1,000 journalists all around the world. And they're going to have an easy interface, but we need these multi-level permissions for this. And so you've got to consider all that.
Another thing that we're actually doing how to do it, and my question is basically how to manage the multi-language thing. You
Multilingual,
have,
right.
Dynamic team that can just translate, like how do you do.
When you say multilingual, I assume that means that people are working in different languages, right? So you need a content management system. Like if you're publishing a Hebrew edition or a French edition or whatever, you're going to have a content management system that can handle other alphabets. That's not a given. You know, it very often a content management system is built for a specific language, and if you need to operate in other languages but access the same templates, you're going to have to either configure specially or make sure it's a content management system that can handle that. That's not trivial. You know, just because it's, you know, some of it's like special characters and stuff, and some of it's order, you know. Some languages go left to right or top to bottom, and that'll change your templates and flow. So, you know, those things are not trivial, let alone the interface itself, right? I mean, if you've got somebody who's a native Hebrew speaker or a native Spanish speaker, you probably would prefer the instructions are Spanish or Hebrew as well, because I've seen that too in systems where, you know, it'll let you publish in another language, but the instructions are in English, which, you know, in the organizations I was in, the people were proficient in English, but I still always felt like it would have been nicer if instructions were in the native tongue, right? But I don't know how much extra that would have cost to do that. So okay, so and what about distribution? So these are, you know, I'm going to take a picture of that just so I have it. So these are, you know, for a news organization, some of the CMS issue. You know what? I have it on video. I don't have to take a picture. It's gonna. So what about distribution for a news organization? How did you decide to distribute your news?
So we considered we have an app with the notifications every time news or it's posting.
So you're going to distribute on the web, just regular website, app. Okay, and you're going to pay the price for developing that. And it's going to be how many platforms? iOS?
At least on iOS and
iOS. Which iOS devices? iPhone, iPod, iPad. How many versions back? See? That's for those who couldn't hear it, there was a huge sigh. But these are the kinds, I mean, this is like the kind, you know, it's like, hey, you know, I've actually heard sighs like that. And you know, because like, for example, if you want to go all the way back to the iPad 1, that's really difficult. The New York Times right now, the New York Times iPad app is not backwards supported to the 1 because the operating system and power of the device have changed enough that they just don't want to support that anymore. So if you download the New York Times app on your iPad 1, they say, sorry, this device isn't supported. So, you know, you got to decide how much. So I'm not saying you have to decide all this now, but are you going to go back to the 4S or are you going to go back to the 3? You know, and some of that will be determined by, and then are you going to support Android? And are you going to optimize for each of which devices? You know, like all the Samsung devices, the tablets, the phones. What about the Kindle Fire? Kindle Fire has a branched version of Android with certain different requirements that you have to allow for. So, and that adds time to production and templates, and may add workflow time as well, because somebody's got, maybe has to check each time, so these are, and I'm not saying we have to decide all that right now, but these are the kind of questions you come up with. If you say, I'm going to distribute through an app, that's easy to say, but then when you actually get into, so what else? You're going to web app, anything else? Social media? Or,
Yeah, social media.
so, okay, which social media?
Facebook, Twitter,
Why?
it's pretty user-friendly to read,
Okay.
your headlines and
All right, what about Instagram?
Instagram too.
What about Pinterest? You don't know? Okay, so what about Snapchat?
How many people really think it's a good
Okay. What about Snapchat? CNN is on Snapchat, you sure? All right, Snapchat, no. Okay. What about, you're going to be in other languages. So what about, are you going to be in Chinese? You're going to be Weibo? Yeah? Wait, you're not, are you not, I'm asking that.
Oh, no, because I don't know what the platform
Right, okay, so
We're having international news and languages.
yeah, so but I'm saying, so these are the kind of discussions you have too, and then, so, and are you going to have staff for each of these? That's what I'm saying. So like, how are you going to monitor? How are you going to make sure? How are you going to, because if you do it in an automated way, it's not as good as if you customize for each one. But if you customize for each one, that's person hours and cost. So, all right. I mean, I think we've done enough, but I mean, it allows me, this kind of discussion allows us to raise the issues and, the considerations and the things that can make you, pull your hair out. So what about health? We had talked here. Let me share the screen again. Desktop, screen share, and health news. So we have a health website, US based. What do you think?
So,
With CMS.
right, so starting with the fact that there's a request for personalized health portfolios, but also with news and informational analysis. I think it is important that there's a subsection that has a higher security.
So you're going to have a proprietary CMS rather than a web-based, or rather than open source, I should say.
It would be web-based. Because we would have to probably look at two different platforms, considering that one of them will need higher security than the other. One being more information.
Okay, so that really adds complexity because if you have two CMSs, right? You've got, I mean, that diagram that we had of whoops, ooh, stop. That diagram that we had of
Taxonomy.
well, no, not a taxonomy of the content flow, where it was actually fairly accurate. I mean, it's a simple representation, but it was, it pulls from a database, pulls a template, puts them together, and sends to a server. But then if a server is going to have to decide, okay, based on this kind of thing, somebody's getting their health information portfolio, go to this content management system. Wait, they want news now, go to that. You're going to have, especially if you try to integrate those two pages together, it's not, I don't think I've ever seen someone successfully integrate two content management systems onto a single HTML page. So I mean, so it's, you may, but this is a consideration, right? Your security for health.
I guess it depends on how robust you want either side. Like, if you're pumping up the secure-based ones, but make it more about a portfolio focused thing that happens to pull in information and news, RSS feeds, things like that, that will still give news but in a sidebar to a portfolio page, then I can see that working. Or just-
How are you gonna put that portfolio on sidebar on though? I mean, if it's in the same browser window.
Or just have one CMS, but make sure that when you design the CMS, when you design the database, that, you know, the personal information has and this is almost as complicated as having two CMSs, but make sure that you have granular protection over that personal information.
Which again, that's easy to say, but
No, it's hard.
you know, I've worked with.
Complex as hell.
It's one of those things, like I've worked with open source systems a lot and proprietary systems some, and I don't think I've ever worked with an open source system on which there was not a security glitch. I think there's always been, you know, something where somebody injected something into the database, or there was a security patch for anything. Right, and if you're dealing with health portfolio information, by government regulation, that's really sensitive stuff. So if you're going to go with an open source system like WordPress or Drupal or something like that, then you're going to have staff that's like 24/7, super good, you know, and if they're, you know, blocking attacks. So I mean, so web-based or proprietary, we've talked about a bit.
And so even if you look at something like this is in CUNY, for instance, that goes to anytime we want to, we have our main website that has information on it, but anytime we go into our student records, that's a separate website. Like, is that against what we're asking for?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, think of the experience. Think of the user experience, right? I mean, if you're doing a health news website, you know, well, it doesn't say news, but this is health website, US-based news information, etc. You know, if you make someone open up a separate website for their portfolio, that's kind of a weird experience, right? I mean, for you, it's, you know, it's a little clunky to do it as a Baruch student, but you're a Baruch student no matter what, and you're invested in this, and you're going to do it because you have to access. But you know, if you're a media company and your whole value proposition is we give you information about health and health news and wellness and, you know, and right, and it's especially valuable to you because not only do you get all this health news stuff, but if you plug in your health portfolio, you know, we'll feed you news and information that's specific to your portfolio, and when you're done with your portfolio and you've learned some, you can go back to reading health news that's relevant to, you know, if you say, and by the way, you've got to open up this other browser and go to this different URL, that's, you know, I mean, just think of the user experience. So, and that's where this really all starts is, you know, what's the experience that someone's going to have. So you've got, I mean, in many ways, what we're talking about on parts of this class is kind of user experience design, even though I haven't really called it that, but you know, that's one way, one lens through which you can look at this. I mean, media is a consumption experience and can be a participatory experience, and part of your job if you're dealing with the technology and the management of it is designing it so that it's, you know, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about balancing client versus server, right? What's the experience? Blocking ads, what's the experience, right? So, all right, I mean, we don't have to belabor this, but I want to raise the issue. So it's, you know, it's static graphics, personalized health portfolio, which you touched on. Okay, so there's an articles database that's uploaded as needed.
Right.
So, you know, maybe, you know, it's, you know, so your staffing frequency, et cetera, is probably less than the news site, but you have to allow for some amount. I mean, and you have to decide if your health news, how are you going to treat breaking news, right? Are we going to throw all our staff at it and have 20 articles all at once because there's been some new discovery? Yeah, there's Ebola, or some new discovery about cancer, you know, or whatever, right? Some major, occasionally that's huge news. And if you guys are the health website.
The argument for that being that, you know, you might want to throw more articles on something like Ebola outbreak, and that will draw eyes to your page. Like, if you're depending on
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you're bearing that cost,
Yeah.
right? You know, you've got to say, all right, because I'm going to get a content management system that can handle that level of frequency, right? Our staff is going to stay the same, but where we usually have sort of regular publishing schedule, we will publish as needed, and there will be times when we're doing 20 articles at once, or we didn't say videos, but let's say if there were videos, right? So we're doing 20 articles at once, and and 10 videos and 5 explanatory graphics and whatever. So you're going to have a system that's robust enough to handle that, even though you're not going to use it most of the time. And when you have your needs discussion about your CMS, you have to discuss the peak, right?
And there's always going to be an AP receipt. There's always some kind of casual frequency. We can set up a baseline of how many articles come out.
Yeah, but your baseline, but you also have to decide whether you're going to provision for. So, all right, so I think, we've talked through kind of some of the core issues there. What about distribution? How are you going to distribute?
Yeah.
And obviously, you're going to have to be very careful that your portfolio stuff is very carefully sectioned off. And mistakes do get made, in the content. But it's okay. So you're doing that.
So yes, Twitter.
And what about? So you're assuming you have kind of an older adult demographic.
Yeah, so older age groups, but we're also saying that often people who work with the older age groups who may benefit from.
So not Pinterest, not Snapchat.
Right.
Okay. So, and then, video, audio, you project, but so these are the kinds of considerations, right? Like, who's my audience? What am I going to provision for? If I'm, there are a couple of websites and, things that you want to provision for, like the educational website, if it's kids, maybe you do want to think about Snapchat. Or entertainment news, you do maybe want to think about Pinterest. They don't have a fashion site on here, but if it's, entertainment, maybe you want Vine, maybe you want, and if it's fashion, maybe, or food, maybe you want Pinterest, maybe you want Instagram, if it's humor. So these are all, decisions that affect the technology you're going to use and the technology you're going to make. I did finally find that video of JavaScript. So let me open that up and play it. I'm sorry, it's content management. So I don't know how much of this I'll play, but
car has thousands of cars parked.
so
In this screencast, we're going to dive.
if you guys at home can't hear this, then you can play this for yourselves later. Let me just see what. Okay, whoops. Stop. No, I'll just go like that. Then now we're good.
To the world of a very popular scripting language called JavaScript. JavaScript is used on most major portal websites today, and its major use is to make your static HTML, CSS web page more dynamic and eventful. Let me show you a few sites that implement JavaScript. First one's Yahoo.
So let me just say this is an older website with older JavaScript with with older sort of visual representation, but the concepts are still valid, and that's what I wanted to show. Like it just, so you'll see.
You see this Netflix ad right here? This is injecting with JavaScript. Can be or maybe, but this, when you mouse over the Mail tab, the Messenger tab, even go down to the logo tab, this is done by JavaScript. You see how there's animation? Right? This is not Flash, this is JavaScript. Let me show you another one, which is MSN. Even though it looks static, there are parts of the site that uses JavaScript. For example, if I click the minus button, you see how the news item decreases, right? This is done using JavaScript. There's also another one, dig.com. You can use JavaScript to create this effect, or even this ad can be injected by JavaScript. So just looking at these sites, what does JavaScript help you accomplish? It helps you create visual effects on your static pages, so it look more dynamic, right? For example, image swap. If you mouse over something and the image changes, that's image swap. It can also dynamically show and hide content for you. For example, if I click on this login button, you'll see the login box show up. Right? These boxes weren't there before, but once I click login, these showed up. This is JavaScript. And there's also content injection on the fly. This is called content injection on the fly. You see this ad, this is also content injection on the fly.
So what he means by content injection on the fly is he's saying that in certain instances within your HTML, you're going to have some JavaScript code in there, and the JavaScript code is going to say, go to this ad server and pull whatever I'm given in this spot. And so it injects, so the HTML can allow for something from somewhere else to be sent into it via JavaScript. So it'll say, so the JavaScript will say, contact this ad server and say, do you have an ad here? And then it'll inject that. And it also allows what you see up here, this kind of interface with the database, where it'll say, not only does it allow for the replacement of the image or the expansion or placement of an image, it also allows you, when you put a username and a password, to contact the database by the JavaScript and then release the page that would be behind an HTTPS protected protocol or something like that, a secure protocol. So the JavaScript can allow those kinds of operations. Now, some of the operations, some of the kind of image replacement, image changing, can be handled by HTML5 now. Some of them can't, but the concept of script within the HTML allowing for things that the HTML alone can't handle is something that's good to know.
JavaScript, you can do form validations.
So that's what he was talking
about. Please enter your name here. So if I enter something, it sends through. But if I don't enter something, it's going to say, please fill in your name.
So that's what I was talking about before, where you can have, allow for that kind of interactivity that may not have been possible without JavaScript. Any questions about that? Oops. All right. So let me go back to the content distribution part of the class. So we got somewhat along in here. So we talked about I have no idea why this is this font, but so we talked about creating certain content, how you're going to manage it, and now we're talking about how are you going to distribute it now that you know how you're going to host it. and what platforms and techniques you're going to use. We talked about how to do a GET request, hosting and serving, and we looked at for video, that may be a special case with video because you may have to decide, well, for your content in general, you're going to have to decide owned or managed on site or shared cloud like Amazon. We talked about pros and cons in that. And then I started to talk a little bit about video, and I said you have to decide what standards you're going to support, right? Are you going to support, video, even though there is an HTML5 standard for video, it's still not completely standardized throughout, and you've got to decide, am I going to serve everybody on every kind of device, no matter, or browser, no matter what kind of video they're called for? What if they, don't have HTML5 and they require, and am I going to use Flash? Flash is rapidly declining in use. Am I going to do MPEGs so that people can watch if they are using an interface that uses MPEGs? Am I going to use the H.264 standard, which is what Apple tends to use, 265, and we're going to use WMV, which is what Windows uses sometimes. So for all the different platforms and devices, I'm going to have to decide how many standards am I going to code and encode my video for. And I also may want to host it separately because video has those special requirements that I mentioned before. And another thing that you might want to use is a content delivery network. So when if you have all your material on servers or a server in one location or even a few locations, there still might be people who are very distant from where you are. And if you're delivering media, especially media that may be fairly heavy or intensive like video, you may want to make sure that the experience of everybody in all of your locations has a good experience. For example, if you're Netflix, when somebody subscribes to Netflix, they expect to get their video in a fairly seamless fashion. It's really, really frustrating. I'm sure you've had this happen, right? When you're watching a video and there's a dropout and it gets grainy, or there's a second that gets choppy, or you have to watch while it waits to catch up. Those things happen even with content delivery, but without content delivery networks, you can find that a lot because the internet is a network of networks and things go through a lot of different nodes. So you might use the system of distributed servers in a content delivery network, which maintains copies of your stuff at multiple locations, multiple nodes, and it increases redundancy and decreases that latency I was talking about. The redundancy is, if you have all your stuff in a few server farms or a server farm and one of them goes down, then everything gets messed up. Or if some part of the internet is having a slowdown because of denial of service attacks, but if your stuff is pushed out to all these edge locations, then even if part of your audience or community has slowdowns, not all of it will. And you also might find yourself with some cost savings. Let's look at this video from Akamai. Again, I don't advocate Akamai especially. I don't, but this is a good video. Akamai does happen to be the most popular CDN. And this video does a decent explanation of explaining the concept of a content delivery network.
Hi, I'm Neil Cohen, Director of Product Marketing at Akamai Technologies. Today I'm going to teach you how to transform the internet for enterprise applications in a way that requires no hardware, no software, and no code changes to your software applications. More and more enterprises are looking to leverage the internet as their application delivery platform because they want to be able to deliver applications to any type of user, whether it's an employee, a business partner, or a customer, anywhere in the world at any time. As a result, people are taking their applications and migrating off of their private WAN to the internet to take advantage of its global scale and cost efficiencies. Now, unfortunately, the internet does not behave like your private network because the internet is a network of networks consisting of thousands of different networks that make up the internet. And as you try to deliver applications to these end users from your application infrastructure, you encounter a variety of internet bottlenecks that range from routing, transport, to the application layer. What I'd like to do is walk you through each of those different types of bottlenecks and how they impact your applications. The first one is routing bottlenecks. Peering points, the points between service providers, cause new packet loss inconsistencies related to the internet application delivery because last mile providers get paid, first mile providers get paid, and everybody else in the middle has to carry that traffic for free. So there isn't an economic incentive. And then you also have the BGP, or Border Gateway Routing Protocol, that's used to route requests over the internet in a non-performance-based way. It uses measures like number of hops as opposed to actual round-trip time. Moving up the stack, you also have transport inefficiencies related to the TCP protocol. TCP is a very chatty protocol, meaning that you have to communicate lots and lots of different times over the internet to be able to communicate. You may have very good bandwidth in the last mile and very good bandwidth in the first mile, but because of the packet loss and the latency in the middle mile, you can't get the maximum throughput rate associated with the type of connectivity you have coming out of your internet. You also have application layer inefficiencies and bottlenecks related to the HTTP again. So again, you have more and more round trips over the internet based on the fact that you have a chatty application protocol, an inefficient communication protocol, all over a non-optimal path. And the end result is users anywhere in the world, the further they get away from this application infrastructure, the worse performance, the worse availability that they're going to get for their internet delivered applications. Fortunately, Akamai is here to help. What Akamai has done is built a highly distributed global overlay of the internet by deploying tens of thousands of servers at the world's internet edge. What that means is we're within one network hop of more than 90% of the world's internet users, meaning we're very close to your users, and we're very close to your application infrastructure. Through DNS, each user is mapped to an optimal Akamai server. What we do from server to server is we insert our own optimized protocols into the internet to address the internet bottlenecks we had discussed beforehand. We start by optimizing the routing, ensuring optimal round trip times and minimal packet loss through a dynamic routing technology that we apply real time for every user and every request. We then get under the hood of TCP to maximize throughput between those two servers. We eliminate connection acknowledgements, TCP slow start. We apply TCP multiplexing and very intelligent retransmit algorithms so that you can get lots of throughput across the internet, but at the same time recover very quickly from packet loss experienced in the last mile for something like a wireless network. We also get under the hood of the HTTP protocol and optimize application-specific bottlenecks. When an HTML page is delivered to that edge server, we can parse through that application and be able to request and pull objects and files into that edge server so that when the browser needs to get that, we deliver it from the edge instead of having to deliver from your origin infrastructure. And of course, we apply caching and intelligent compression algorithms to reduce the chattiness of that protocol as well. The net result is regardless of where you are in the world, you're going to get local performance, good response times, high availability, and consistency, making your users all over the world happy. Akamai key role in fulfilling your IT initiative.
All right, so now comes the ad for Akamai. But you know, the aside from the sales pitch for Akamai, which again I have no position on one way or the other, you know, you can see how his way of explaining it, you know, reinforces what I said, maybe says it better. How distributing, you know, having your content on a content delivery network might help you as a media organization, and that's part of your distribution strategy as well. Do we want to, you know, we've chosen our content management system, we've chosen how we're going to have our servers that, you know, is going to access the content we provide. Are we going to spread our content out onto a content delivery network so that our users have the optimal experience? And this can be especially important in the mobile era, you know, because they do have that extra agent sometimes, which is a barrier or a translation layer between serving of the HTML page and delivery to the phone. It might have to go through an agent. You can look up. I believe on the presentation, agent is linked. I don't want to get into that too much, but it basically means different mobile devices need to sometimes have the HTML, or the media that's being delivered to them, processed in a way that will be optimal for that device or that operating system. So one of the things that's interesting to think of, if you want to think about it mathematically as well, is this example right here. So and one of the reasons it can actually save costs or increase your capacity without increasing costs is that I see I have possible reduced costs in 2 places here. So I'm going to reduce that and get rid of that. But imagine you have a 200 gigabit central server capacity, but a network backbone, the wire itself, that only handles 10 gigabits per second. So even though your central server can send out 200 gigabits per second, your backbone only allows 10 gigabits per second, so your end users are all sharing this 10 gigabits per second backbone, so that's the limit at which you can deliver the content. But if you have 10 gigabit servers to 10 edge locations, and each one of them is connected to a 10 gigabit backbone, you can actually concurrently deliver 100 gigabits, so you're actually having lower server capacity in total, but because you have the servers out to the edge and people can access those. So you can see how the math works out, where sometimes with a lower server capacity but more distributed network optimized, you can actually save money in that way via the CDN and actually save capacity. Does that make sense? Tom? Yeah, yes? Okay. So that's an important, and that's just a math thing, which it's something that you should understand. And if there is math on a midterm exam, something like that might be one of the examples. I don't know how much more obvious I can be. So I get asked questions all the time, so I figure why not just answer it before I'm asked. So we can finish up right now, but next time we look at this, we'll look at other ways of distributing your content, such as syndication via feeds and APIs, third parties like social media, and then issues around mobile. And we'll look at a case study in mobile where we look at some of these issues of third-party distribution, and like Apple News and apps, and balancing it off as a media organization. Which one are you going to choose, and what are the choices you have to make from a technology business perspective? Any questions before we wrap up for the night? All right. I hope those of you who are on the Hangout found it an acceptable. Is the Hangout still working? Yes, it is. Ah. Okay. All right. See you. I'll see you